Welcome to Meaningful Mornings. Apraptasya prapti. In English, what this means, to gain that which is ungained. Apraptasya prapti. To gain that which is ungained. Praptasya prapti. To gain that which is gained. Praptasya prapti, to gain that which is gained. If you reflect on the latter, to gain that which is gained, how is that possible? How is that logical? This can only make sense where there is forgetfulness. I have forgotten what I already have, what I already am. And so the way to gain what I already have, what I already am, is to remember. Forgetfulness is avidya. I've forgotten. And remembering is vidya. I remember all of my good fortune. I remember what my nature is. Meaningful Mornings is an intense workshop to not focus on the external, to not externalize, to not need anything or anyone for joy. Which is why we forever use the term independent joy. Our course, our community is unique in its intensity, in its internalization. Reviewing our last verse, verse 70, chapter 2. Bhagavad Gita, okay? Apuryamanam achala pratishtitam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantimapnoti na kama kami. Apuryamanam, to be filled. Yet, achala pratishtitam, to remain unmoved. What is like this? Samudra apaha pravishanti yadvat. The ocean is like this. Filled with the water from rivers, yet as if unmoving. Who is like this? Tadvat kama ya pravishanti sarve. The content one has desires that are moved into the equipments, yet sashantimapnoti. The content one is ever unmoved. In comparison, nakama kami, not the one who is desiring contentment from the external. Adding one more thought here. The one who's content, praptasya praptihi, they have remembered their nature's joy, so their experience is one of contentment. They do not identify with the equipments, and so they don't identify with the experiences. Here, identification means depending on them. The one who's forgotten who they are, they feel like they're the ego. What does the ego do? Identifies. With what? The equipments. For what? Experiences, hoping to be content. This is impossible. One can never be complete from an experience because that's changing. An equipment, that's changing. The ego, that's changing. Impossible. The experiences, the equipments, the ego keeps coming. And all that keeps coming also keeps going. Those who don't figure this out, those who don't tune into this fact, they're lost in the disease of becoming. Bhavaroga. When you depend on that which is coming, built into that is going, all you do is become. Become this, become that. One is never being happiness. A simple message from this verse is try to be more natural. The more natural you are, externally, internally, the more real your nature will become. You will feel that your nature is being. We continue. The teachings of the content are completed in verse 68. The reminders began in verse 69. 69, 70, and now 71, all reminders of the teaching. Vihaya kamanya sarvan pumamscharati nisprahaha nirmamo nirahankaraha sashantim adhigacchati. First quarter. Sarvan, all. Kaman, desires. Vihaya, they're gone. They're abandoned. And this first quarter is a direct reference to verse 55. When Prince Arjuna asks, tell me about how the extraordinary think, Sri Krishna shares the first, the foremost, the final way to know the extraordinary is that they are content. The opposite of contentment is desires. So when one has no desires, they are content. Puman charati nisprahaha, such a being, charati, moves. And how wonderfully Sri Krishna is using the word charati in the previous word, achala. Though moving, is unmoved by all of the experiences, the equipments. Nisprahaha, freely. The one who's content moves in a simple way, in a free way. How can we start to live like this? In Swami Chinmayananda's commentary, and he's famous for this. He shares the happiness quotient. Is there anyone here who's not heard of this before, the happiness quotient? Some of you have your hands up. You just don't remember. The happiness quotient is desires fulfilled, which is on top, and desires entertained, which is on the bottom. The numerator, the denominator. I think I'm using the correct terms. Society focuses on the desires fulfilled, as in increase the numerator. That is a very complex way to go about living. Our scriptures encourage us to focus on the denominator, which is to decrease the desires entertained. That is a simpler way to go about living. Fulfilled, there's so many variables to manage. Entertained, the only variable you have to manage is yourself. Reflect lots on that. This is recorded. If what I've shared with you, you didn't catch, listen, watch the recording again. Trying to make this more practical. Increase the quality of your desires. If you increase the quality of your desires, you will also decrease the quantity of your desires. And a lovely way to do this, help others. A word that we often use technically is serve, S-E-R-V-E. Parakaryam sadnoti iti sadhu. Whenever we think of the word sadhu, which means a well-wisher, sadhu means one who is noble. We tend to externalize this. They live in a different context. This is not true. The simple definition of a sadhu is one who works for others. One who helps others accomplish. Parakarya means others work. Sadnoti means they facilitate this. So if one's desires to help others, if one's desires to serve, the desires entertained will decrease and finally become zero. Then one will be content. Then everything we're flowing through will be your biography. Third quarter, nirmama, which means not mine. Nirahankaraha, which means not I. Not mine, not I. These are reminders for how we should live. The more one focuses on minus, M-I-N-E-S-S, minus, or one S, sorry, minus, the more established the I-ness will be. The more minus, the more I-ness, which is why our scriptures keep on sharing, have less minus, less materials, because this will weaken the sense of I-ness, the sense of individuality. And this is a cycle. The more I-ness there is, the more minus there is. They fuel each other. Sashantim adigachati, the one who has no sense of individuality, only infinity, naturally has no sense of possessiveness, they only feel peace. Adigachati, they're not going to peace. They're rediscovering peace. With this, we complete the 10th summary characteristic of the one who is extraordinary. And I think I misspoke or misordered these for you. In verse 62, the quality that is highlighted is to be aware. The one who is extraordinary is aware, which is why they're not distracted. In verse 65, they are wise. They know that peace is from their own being and not external. In verse 69, they are reflective. No experience passes without them learning from that. And now in verse 71, they are humble. This is the 10th lakshana of the one who's sthita prajna, humble. Nirahankaraha, nirmamo. From inspiration to application. Your application yesterday was to write out a paragraph. I think back in the day when you got in trouble, you had to write out paragraphs, correct? Or in class, you have to write on the board. I remember writing on the board so many times. Like Bart Simpson does in the beginning of The Simpsons, correct? This idea is totally in opposition to the modern belief in the material world. The materialists believe that by fanning up desires and satisfying as many of them as possible, one is helped to live a life of joy and happiness. The modern civilization based upon industrialization is attempting to whip up desires, and this attempt has now succeeded so much that an average man has 1,000,000 times more desires today than his forefathers ever entertained a century ago. The financiers and industrialists, with the aid of the modern scientific knowledge, struggle hard to satisfy the new desires. And to the extent an individual has come to fulfill his newly created desires, he is taught by the civilization that he is happy. What a lie. And that's why we had to write this out, so that this is burned into our hands and our eyes and our mind, that this is a lie. Your application for this morning, I want you to rate your sadhutva. Your sadhutva. 1 is awful, 100 is awesome. How much of your life is dedicated to facilitating others' work, others' sense of being accomplished? Shanti, shanti, shantihi. Be safe, be sound, be serene, be happiness.